Good evening. Welcome. My name's Jess Moore, and I'm president of AIGA Colorado. One of the themes tonight is travel. I call my GPS Roberta. Moving to Denver 2 years ago, I was thankful for the navigation, even though sometimes she led me astray. Roberta! At least with the mountains, I knew where west was. Lucille Tenazas will be sharing a roadmap this evening about our journeys as designers. Unlike Roberta, with Lucille as our guide, we'll be more equipped to bridge situations, contexts, and cultures, and be prepared to better understand our environment. AIGA Colorado is proud to be a statewide chapter. While our headquarters are here in Denver, chapter events are popping up across the state. I invite you to keep your eye out for road trip opportunities for our AIGA events. Boulder just hosted its first speaker night last week with James Puckett, a type designer who offered insights on new developments in letter forms. Coming up, travel down to Colorado Springs for a shop talk with Luke Flowers on December 1st. Luke is a previous in-house designer, now a nationally recognized illustrator and musician based in the Springs. He'll share how he realized his goal to bring illumination of imagination to his life and work. AIGA Colorado is excited to bring you these opportunities in the far reaches of our state. We have Craftworks coming up on December 5th, and then January's Drink and Draw will be hosted in 4 cities: Denver, Boulder, Durango, and Colorado Springs. Recently, students from across the state came together for Design Slam, a competition where students went head-to-head to solve visual problems in front of a live audience. We have winners here tonight. The winners are Paul Thompson from Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, Sydney Atencio from the Art Institute of Colorado. Give a wave. I know I saw her tonight. Give a wave. Is Paul here? Yes. We have Emily Shirt from Fort Lewis College, who might not be here because of the distance, but we'll applaud. And then Brian Morissette from Ames Community College. Brian, are you in the house? Congratulations to all for accepting the challenge. Your journey is just beginning, and we are thrilled to have you along for the ride. Thank you all for coming out this evening. And special thanks go out to Marjorie Gardner and the Design Council, as well as the Denver Art Museum. The Design Council invites you to their annual awesome fundraiser, Save the Date for Design After Dark, which is on February 5th this year, or this coming year. The theme will be a mass. For more information, go to designafterdark.denverartmuseum.org. Because of AIGA, we come together as designers to inspire. At AIGA Colorado, we are nomads together to support and learn from each other at every stage of our career. Some of us will be traveling across the country in the coming week to celebrate Thanksgiving. I wish you safe travels. I'd now like to introduce you to Jenny Taylor, our Speaker Series event chair.
Yeah, everybody. I'm taller than Lucille. How's everyone doing? Is everyone ready for Thanksgiving next week? Is it next week already? Pumpkin pie? I mean, come on, people. That's worth it right there. And also, I just wanted to remind you guys, we are giving away 4 posters of Lucille's after the Q&A, so please, stay around for that. I've been given some numbers that I might call. No, just kidding. I'm not going to. It's totally fair, I promise. So how to introduce Miss Lucille? I was going to start off by calling her a bunch of names, but they're nice names. I know your family's here, so don't beat me up afterwards, I promise. They're going to be nice. So she has been called a postmodernist, which could be a bad name, depending on who you're talking to. National Design Award winner. She has also won awards with AIGA. She was the AIGA National President. I don't know if you guys knew that. That was in '96. Yeah, so she was the president of all these things that we're doing right now, part of this. Yes, we were talking tonight that she was the first non-New York president for AIGA, right? I mean, like, we are everywhere. We're not just in New York, I promise. Her work has been described as having soft power, which I think is kind of cool terminology. It's been called beautiful and pretty, another word that maybe pretty isn't, PC with everyone, but I think that we talk a lot about beauty and pretty, and yeah, so I think it's good. It's a good word, I promise. Very determined. I don't know if you guys know this little fun facts. I like fun facts, but she did 65 interviews before she got her first job. So just imagine that. I mean, that's pretty determined. I mean, I have not done that many until I'm like, I'm done, I'm over it, don't want to do it anymore. So that's amazing. She was also quoted from her friend Lorraine Wild. Let me find that, which was such a good quote, and I loved it. I don't know where it is, but there it is. She has respect for the content, yet also embodies her own poetic project. So I thought that was really cool as well, like that idea of like you're doing work for the client, but you're still like having your own voice in there somewhere. She's been called a catalyst in her career as a teacher and a designer. And of course, why we're here tonight is that she has been a traveler and better yet, the cultural nomad. So that's what she's going to talk to us about tonight. And I would love for Louise to come up here if you're not offended by any of the name calling. And let's welcome her to Denver and the stage.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I have to stand in front of the mic because I opted to keep my necklace. That was the deal breaker because the AV guy said, if you want the roving mic, you have to get rid of your necklace. I said, no way. I'm just going to have to keep it. It's part of the look. Okay, so, yes. Anyway, thank you for inviting me. This is the second time I've spoken publicly in Denver. I guess I was invited by George Lim, who's here at the Art Directors Club many years ago. And that was 12 years ago. So I hope those of you in the audience then, if you see anything that you remember, or maybe you don't, but I continuously evolve, hopefully. So I know that part of my challenge always is to be relevant, not current. There's a difference, but relevant. So anyway, I want to thank, the McCoys, because they were my teachers at Cranbrook from 30 so years ago. It's dating me. And my cousins are here, Jeff and Steve, who I lived with them because they lived 10 minutes away from Cranbrook, totally by chance. My aunt emigrated to Michigan, or the U.S. in the 60s, and when I told her, yeah, there's this school in Michigan, and she said, yeah, well, whatever, that school, Cranbrook. Yeah, your uncle plays tennis there. And I said, yeah, well, it's an art school. Anyway, so I want to thank them. And, they knew me when I was young, and I knew them when they were babies. Okay, so how do I turn the screen on? Okay. Okay, I wanted to talk about what it means to be a traveler and what it means to be a tourist. We all have been travelers, we all have been tourists, but somehow tourists get a bad association. When people say, I don't really want to look like a tourist. I want to feel like I live there, I belong there. I'm not, I don't look like I'm looking around, like confused and whatever. So we kind of affect these behaviors that make us a legitimate, traveler. So what's the difference? We all have been, as I said, at one time or another, travelers and tourists. It doesn't mean that you have to cross geographical boundaries. You don't have to go from one country to another. You can go to another city. You can go to, you go to a party and you don't know anybody. You go to you start a new job. That's, you're being a traveler, you're being a tourist. And so it requires us, and some of you, I think, have different ways of adapting to new situations. And to me, I think that this is a microcosm of what design is about. I always see design as a kind of journey where you don't know what you're going to be confronted with. When I was in San Francisco, where I had my studio for 20 years, I would have a meeting with the San Francisco International Airport board, because I was designing the annual report for the airport. who were all aeronautics, engineers, whatever, business people. And then in the afternoon, I had clients from Silicon Valley who were younger than I was. And so, you realize within a day, within the span of a short amount of time, you were crossing boundaries and you were crossing terrains. So I also mentioned and I gave Jenny this description of what it means to be a nomad. Nomads sometimes also get bad raps because they think, oh, you're so nomadic, you don't settle down. It's like, why don't you just stay in one place and, and get to know it? But I think nomadic behavior, or nomads, for one thing, are worthwhile in that they adapt to the place. A tourist stands peripherally in the, outside of an experience, whereas a nomad actually soaks it in and adapts. So I think we are all three at any one time or another by varying degrees. So I thought I'd begin with my trajectory. So in my case, of course, I originally from the Philippines, I came to the United States to go to graduate school. So I thought I'd begin with what the Philippines is about. Now, I'm essentializing the Philippines, or my country here, but really, it's, I wanted to look at two images that, if you were to bookend my country, you can see on the one hand, the jeepney, which is the remnant or what the Americans left after the Second World War. And to me, it's a symbol of creativity and inventiveness because the jeeps were there, they were brought in, and then they left them. And so Filipinos saw them and said, hey, what can we do with this? And so this is the most colorful, very quick conveyance mode of transportation in Manila. It's very polluted and very congested, but if you go there, this is what you'll see a lot of. And it's very, every jeepney is hand painted. This is not digitally, this is not photoshopped. And neither is it, with vinyl covering like the buses. No, this is all hand painted. So it is a reflection of the aesthetic of the driver, or a family, and you see family names, you see the names of their children, whatever. Then the bottom image is to me represents the kind of multicultural landscape of my country. When you look at any Filipino, you could see that there's a Malay stock, the basic stock, but they're either Hispanic, there's the Spanish because they were there for 300 years, and then, or there's the Chinese. So we are at the crossroads of Southeast Asia. It's the only Catholic country in Southeast Asia. And so if you look at this, these are all Filipino women. And, when I was growing up, my mother, a lot of Filipinos actually have a fascination for beauty contests. And so when we were growing up, we always watched these beauty queens, like Miss Universe, Miss International, and more often than not, a Filipina finalist would make it to the semi-finalist. And so it's really because of the mix. So if you look at all of these, the woman on the right could be from South America. The woman in the middle, or the woman in the middle could be from Korea. And then the woman on the left could be from Spain. So, but they're all the same. They're all to be found in my country. So I look at this as a kind of the aberration maybe of the beauty contest and looking at external features, the sort of pulchritude, women. And then on the other side, I think, it's the representation of this sort of perpetual capacity for inventiveness. Okay, this is my family when we were still four. There's 6 of us. My father was a civil engineer and my mother was a history teacher. But my father, I didn't realize, had a plan. So this was my introduction to a naming system. So I'm the second of 6. So you can see my name there is 7, my last name, Tenazas, which actually means pincers in Spanish. So it's where the word tenacity comes from. So if you look at Tenazas, it's 7 letters. So my father, I think a lot of cultures look at 7 as a very lucky number. And so when my sister was born, Lynette, I was 13. And my father called us, the older kids, Lynn Marie, me, and my brother, Venus, and he said, okay, your sister is home from the hospital, but she has no name. So you all have to help come up with a name on 2 conditions. And of course, I'm thinking, what conditions? And initial L and 7 letters. And then that's when it dawned on me. I said, no wonder my name has 7 letters. So my father, being the mathematician engineer he was really bent on this kind of system and symmetry. So the symmetry here is that there are 3 girls and 3 boys. Now you don't really plan that, but that's what happened, okay? So here are the girls, and they're all initial L, and look at the names, they're all Western, and then my brother's names are all Spanish, so whatever, that's how it comes up. And then so there's my brothers. And then this is again unplanned. The oldest 3 are right-handed, and the bottom 3 are left-handed. So Lynette, for some reason, was showing a predisposition to use her left hand, and my father said, enough of the lefties, right? So just take that pencil out and just grab it and use, forced her to use her right hand. So she is ambidextrous. Who of you here are ambidextrous? Anybody? It's a rare thing. It's a gift. Good. Cutting on your left, writing with your right. Okay, so here's my trajectory. Coming from Manila in 1979, and then arriving in San Francisco, that was where I landed. And then Michigan, because I went to Cranbrook in a year later, or actually 6 months later. And then, when you're a young designer, the first thing you do is where do you go to practice? You go to New York. That's where the opportunities present themselves. And that's where Jenny said, she didn't say where I interviewed 65 times. It was in New York. So I had a lot of energy and tenacity, I guess, if you can call it that. But I think it's mostly, my work was so experimental and people could not place me. After the work I did at Cranbrook, which you'll see here, they just said, you're not going to get a job with this kind of work. This is not, do you do annual reports? And I said, well, I've never done it yet, but, you could take a chance on me if you think that my work shows some potential. But, people sometimes are much more simplistic. Okay, and then when I was in New York, I got a job. My teachers from San Francisco asked me to return to teach. So I went back in 1985, and I was to stay for 20 years. Had my studio there, had my family, had my 2 sons, and then my husband, who's a photographer, was given a fellowship at the American Academy in Rome. And this is our opportunity to live in Rome for 1 year. And my husband, I think, is also a peripatetic kind of person like myself. And so since our house was packed, it was rented out, and we decided, do we return to San Francisco or do we just keep going? And we went for the latter. So we went back to New York 20 years later into another life. And then now I'm at Parsons, and I'll talk about that. So this is just like a really kind of a snapshot of the 6 months I was in San Francisco. And then, of course, here's Cranbrook. I want to acknowledge my teachers, Kathy and Mike McCoy, and they took a chance on somebody from the Philippines, Although, I have to say, she rejected me twice. She rejected me twice. But this is the thing. The backstory was that I sent my slides from Manila, and I was working in a pharmaceutical company. So, of course, my slides had labels of vitamins and stuff, medical convention. So, how creative is that, right? So, so I get a letter. I'm sorry, we cannot take you at this time. Okay, so I thought, okay, I'll apply in another year. Apply another year, and the same form letter comes back, said, I'm sorry, we are not accepting you. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm just going to go to California. It's like the U.S. or bust. So, and California was there, San Francisco, and that was when, after I built up my portfolio, I went to Cranbrook. So, first time in New York was for 4 years there, and then, of course, San Francisco for 20 years. And then Rome. What is Rome like? And I remember people telling me, Lucille, you're a designer, right? Yeah. So what is Rome? What will Rome be for you? Because if you're in design, people like, to choose Milan. You're a contemporary designer in the 20th century, 21st century. And I just said, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Rome is Rome. And to me, after that year, what I realized was that what Rome taught me was how to look closer. This is a city that the ancient, prehistoric, way back, ancient culture coalesces and coexists with the 21st century in a way that is so organic and it seems perfect and right. So you can go to what's this cafe I went to? It was like it was a Renaissance building, and then the cafe inside was totally modern, and somehow it wasn't dissonant. So I think Rome somehow has it, just figured it out, and they live this way. So I tried to work on some of my calligraphy when I was in Rome and did a lot of these collage pieces. It sort of brought me back to the time when people were telling me, Lucille, you have a really good hand, and how is that hand going to be used? And I didn't realize, okay, it's going to be in the service of design in some way. But I just thought, yeah, I had a talent, and that talent was in my hand, and of course, it's in your head. Okay, so New York now returns. Now there's an apple. Of course, when I got there in 1985, it wasn't there yet. It was the beginnings of the apple. So I wanted to show you chronologically, in a way, some of my projects, because it is, in a way, for me, a trajectory that is still in my, I continually look at my work and just say, how am I enriched by this experience? In the same way that when you travel, somehow, like, I think when I came back from Rome, I was so proud of, like, my God, I was able to live there for a year, but how can I show it? How do you show that you have been affected, or you have been shaped in some kind of provocative way, inspirational way, but you're still the same? You return to the country where you left, and you thought, only when you say it, because you're not wearing Italian clothes, you're not talking about Italy all the time, although, I tried to. But I think it's one of those things where it resides in you, that the porosity of your body and your skin has to absorb all these experiences. So I look at my work in the same way. Like, I look at this and I thought, okay, I did this in 1979. Okay, what about this? Well, for one thing, my hand is present here. That Cafe Lido is actually hand-painted. It's all hand-painted with my hand. No letter set, no computer, nothing, and cut and paste. So it reminds me, why am I not using my hand anymore? Cutting paper, all of that. One of my first projects at Cranbrook was this. Actually, this was, I think, the second year when Kathy. A lot of the projects we did, of course, were so hypothetical and didn't really have any, how can I say, professional relevance. I didn't know it at the time. And I think people who were looking at pragmatic professional practices looked at a portfolio and they said, you don't have a book cover, you don't have a record album cover, you can't do it. And they do not think beyond what they see in front of them. So this is what my portfolio was. That's why I went to 65 interviews. I mean, can you imagine? What are they thinking? What can you do? So to me, this was about my first introduction to how typography could be looked at semantically, and also beautifully. So this is the very famous street signs project, where you just choose a certain street section and then document all the visual information you can see from the facade. You can extract. And then you get that pad of paper back to your studio and you think, okay, this is just a list of words. What do they have in common? What is the thread that ties them together? And so I realized that I could create categories, or a system, like my father. So there was a system of dry goods, leather, a lamp store. But instead of showing the positive, I was showing the negative. And so I was defining the shape. So this is where the kind of aesthetic considerations happen. So anyway, I'm going to just show you just the progression of this because, I have other things to show. But this is 1981. So evolving to a series. But, it still, to me, looks relevant. What was going on in my head when I did this? I don't really care what other people think about this. For me, I'm more concerned about why do I show this? Why do I keep showing this? And what is it about this that I can still look at and realize there was something that turned in my head when I did this? This is 1987. This is actually an exhibition poster on Dutch Dutch graphic design. And at the time, the Dutch really mastered the design on a small scale. And for me, it was on the stamps. And so I decided to use that as my kind of focal point. Now, this one is this is later. I'm only showing this because this is really about San Francisco. There's a magazine in San Francisco called 7 by 7, and I was approached by the publisher to come up with a prototype for the maiden issue. So the 7 by 7, if you notice, San Francisco is a peninsula that juts out into the Pacific on the left and the San Francisco Bay on the right. So it is 7 by 7 square miles. It is a square. And so I was really fascinated by the fact that a city magazine, was not called San Francisco or, heaven forbid, Frisco. But it was by this geographical, like not even coordinates, but dimensions. And so I played with using this number in many different ways. These were my proposals. And then I proposed this cover. Well, actually, I'm going to show this first. My idea was to show a different cover design every time. I said, you can have that 7 by 7 explode. Magazines always have faces on the cover. And I said, let's just like get away from that. Another pretty face, another movie star, another singer. Let's just show some themes, like in this case, like, come to San Francisco. So using the back and then maybe beginning a story. And then in this instance, where I get involved editorially, I'm really interested in content, not just the design, but the content, and which made sense to me that I thought, what if there are 7 key stories, and they're all equally weighted? You've seen magazines, there's like a big, bold headline, screaming text, and I said, let's just like do something like the opposite. Black and white cover for the first issue, 7 key stories, and then use it as a grid. Anyway, so this was my proposal. They didn't like it, so they said, yeah, in our mind, it has to be color, and it has to have priorities, hierarchy of stories, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, we decided we would be better off parting ways. But I show this again because I think I stuck to my kind of the approach that I wanted to, and I felt it was really strong, but they were not ready for this approach. Okay, book cover. This is a catalog for the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, where the curator chose 6 landscape architects to do site-specific work. So this is the cover, and I chose an image that is almost generic, so it's not, you can't tell whether there's a piece of sculpture in here. There actually is. And then this is a spread. I'm fascinated with, actually, I realize now the author here, Aaron Betsky, who was the curator of the museum at the time, had a lot of footnotes. And I said, Aaron, why don't we just put them in the end? And he said, no, I really want the footnotes and the page. And I said, but you have more footnotes than text. And I said, I'm gonna really capitalize on the structure of those footnotes and make sure that you don't miss them. You're not just looking at the bottom, so they're actually kind of just ramming against the text. And then this is just a series. I think for some reason my work, I have a lot of clients who are architects. They see that there is a kind of architectonic system in my work. It's not very rigid, but there's a sort of grid. I don't really stay with that consistently, but I like working with images and materials that try and simulate a 2-dimensional surface. So in this case, for example, the names of these lecture presenters, speakers, they're all architects in this lecture series posters. They kind of evolve from one color to another, and it's really my way of, creating a sort of texture. Likewise with this. So the challenge for me was to not use or not, privilege any one particular architect, so that, when you see this, you'd think of architecture and structure, but not necessarily of any one particular architect. In this case, though, this is the work of one particular architect, which is Snøhetta, right there, Craig Dykers. They are doing the addition to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. They're from Norway. But when I saw this image, this is actually a museum of fishermen, or fishing museum, it was very, it looked like a generic building, and I just liked the fact that it was unadorned. It looked like a bunker, and it was very, it's almost like this brutalist architecture. So it was the most modern. I mean, to me, it epitomized what modern was. And so I try and make everything work, the image as well as the text. Before I left for Rome, I was asked by UC Berkeley to design the logo for their architecture school. So I came up with some of these ideas. You'll see, if you look at the website for UC Berkeley architecture, you'll see a permutation of this, again, because this was too complicated for them. But anyway, this is what I showed them, because there are 3 programs there. There's architecture, city planning, and landscape architecture. And I had this idea in my head of the sort of color coding, but also the B taking on a different different components, different structure almost. But really, I was kind of thinking of the slide rule. Does anybody remember a slide rule? Okay, so like you're sliding back and forth on your architect's desk. So, I have this sort of analog interest, but I can see this as being animated as well. So this is the letterhead, trying to propose, I always work with different palette of colors. And when people say, well, is it yellow or gray? I said, it's actually all 3, yellow, gray, or black. And they say, we like both of them. I said, well, why don't you print both? Depending on the day, you can have the vertical, and then on another day, you can have the horizontal. And then, so this is what we ended up with. I mean, so there's a kind of architectonic quality there at the bottom, and the way all the 3 schools are tied together in a horizontal, and then UC Berkeley identity. And then the B is actually just kind of an optional thing if they wanted to use it. So here's another version of it. So I'm going to show you just a series of these, how can I say, they're like type experiments really, but they're for real clients. This is a museum in Seattle, Washington, which is part of the University of Washington, the Henry Art Gallery. I was hired to design their new identity, because you know how museums always like to have their new identity for 2 reasons. They have a new edition or they have a new director, So they always want, like, oh, I want to put my stamp on my museum, on my regime, and so can I have a new logo? It could be an old museum, but it's a new regime. So this is the Henry. So I'm using the monolithic H here, and then actually playing with using the words also in a spelled out version. But I was really interested in looking at this as like a 3-dimensional thing, almost like a landscape. Like I look out and I see, if I were to look at a distance, and I'll see these elements floating in space, so they're not on a single line, they look like they're constantly in motion. These are just some of the applications. This was the brochure. So you can see that the H actually kind of explodes. I don't always use the same thing all the time. It's hard sometimes for people to see, the kinetic quality of it. They say, well, logos are supposed to be in the same place and the same size and whatever. And I said, you have the wrong designer then. So I can just show you here. So anyway, this was their kind of opening invitation. So there's a whole stack here for those who gave $20,000, those who gave $10,000, those who gave $500, whatever. And then this is another museum. So, the museum, this is the Heckscher Museum of Art, which is in, what is the name of that place? In Long Island, I forget the city. And the reason I was approached by the director, who happened to be new, 1, and then 2, they had a new, how can I say, HVAC system, right? I mean, does that merit a celebration? I guess, Yeah, new heating, new lighting, let's do it. Okay, so the Heckscher, it was just known as the Heckscher. And so I thought, let's put it in an enclosed place. So for me, it was more about, they have photography, they have this George Gross, very famous painting, which is the one on the, no, is that the one? Anyway, I forget now, Rich. The one right there, which is on loan at the Met, which is owned by the Heckscher Museum. So these are the applications, the guest passes, little brochure. So this H above the doorway, I thought was really beautiful, and it's like a pressed tin. And I said, let's incorporate this in some way so that there is the old and the new. So the treatment is more contemporary, but I'm using, historic archival elements. This is always, when people come up to me, and I'm sure those of you who design logos and identity systems, they say, can you design my identity? And then they just kind of like, and I said, you want me to design your identity? And so I said, so these three men are architects, and they're three partners, right? So I said, I want to meet all of you, and I want you to answer a questionnaire, and I'll email it to you. And so the questions are very straightforward, but it gives me an insight as to how they operate, especially with three partners. And you always know there's one who leads it. But then they're usually the ones who don't talk a lot. So anyway, my first question was, how do you define architecture? Okay, so, anyway, this guy said, to me, architecture is about the built form. I said, yeah, okay, that's good, built form. And then the other guy says, well, what about you? What do you think of, what's your perception of architecture? Oh, it's being on time and on budget. Okay, so you know what kind of partner he is? Okay, and then the other guy says, what about you? I think it's about how the body moves in the space. And I thought, okay, I'm listening to this guy. Okay, the guy with the money, you have to convince. But you know who you're talking to. Okay, so three guys, I said, okay, they said, we really are connected. I said, you're not gonna like split up or something? He said, no, for now, we're together. And they're still together. So you can look them up on the web. So what I decided to do was have their three names conjoined. And I said, I would give you colors, but you have no, I said, tell me what colors you prefer. And said, but I'm gonna listen, but you have to trust my aesthetic judgment. Okay, so they were happy with the color. They didn't say, yeah, like red, is that what, like any kind of gender associations? Yellow, what is that? But the fact that the three were together and they worked together was fine with them. And then the second sheet of that letterhead system, I was really interested in the chain. I was only interested in the beginning letter and the last letter of their name. And so that's what shows up. It's in a way kind of this, kind of a cryptic definition of their company. So these were some of my design ideas with my assistants working, just go crazy. Of course, none of these happened, but it's just really interesting to play with the typography and the image and how the graphic and typographic can work together. This one we did, this was their kind of mission statement in a postcard, and this one as well. Okay, I'm going to go, I don't need to talk about this, but this is self-evident. And then this one is really, to me, really meaningful because I'm interested in poetry. I'm not a poet, but I like the written word. And when I design books, I make an effort to understand what the author is saying, because I think that a designer should do justice to the work of the writer. And so in this case, for example, I was asked to design the anthology, the cover for this anthology of poetry. And these were some of my proposals. And I said, maybe spell out poetry, maybe use words like poetic structure, iambic pentameter, syntax, stanza, whatever. And then I came up with this last one here on the right, the lower right, and I thought, should I do, when you listen to poems being spoken, you can't, I don't know how you do this, but I can't look at the person reading it or reciting it. I can only look down and just try and absorb it. So it doesn't really help me if I get distracted. So in a way, poetry is about structure, and it's about how the voices sound, the inflections, the weight on certain syllables, etc. So I thought, well, maybe I'd use a certain design approach that uses only the notations. But it's a big leap. And my client was in Boston, I was in San Francisco. I was going through this by phone. We didn't have Skype at the time. He had the PDF, I had my PDF. And then in the end, this is what they chose. And I was really impressed. And I said, I was kind of thinking that you would go for the literal. And he said, well, I'm a poet. I get it. I said, okay, that's good. That's good. I'm glad. It's always wonderful and kind of gratifying if the client rides with you and, you can elevate the level of understanding of what something is, even if you're not a poet. I mean, I don't pretend to be a poet, but I think I'm sensitive and try to understand what that culture is, whatever discipline it is. And again, back to the traveler, you adapt, you can always kind of like, you cannot be them, but you can try to understand and empathize what their business is and what they're about. Now, this is my current client. Some of you may have known of this painting, this very famous painting. There was a movie called A Woman in Gold with Helen Mirren. Anybody saw that? Okay, you got it. Okay, this is the famous Gustav Klimt painting of Adele Bloch-Bauer, very contested because it was stolen by the Nazis and then repatriated to her niece, Maria from Los Angeles, and sold it to Ronald Lauder for $135 million. So Ronald Lauder, of course, as you know, is the son of Estee Lauder. If you ever have a chance to go to New York, I know everybody goes to the Met, to the MoMA, but just 3 blocks up on Fifth Avenue, just go to the Neue Gallery because it's just 2 floors of the most exquisite art and photography that you will ever see. And right now they have a show on Berlin, and it actually covers the scope of the Bauhaus. So it has a Corbusier, the famous pencil drawing that he has. It's up until January, I think. But they hired me a few years ago, I guess in 2008, to design the catalog for their shop, the design shop. And this was their 10th anniversary. This was 3 years ago. And I'm just going to show you some of the covers because in the past, prior to them hiring me, they only had very, very straightforward covers. It's all red, all blue or something, and then very expensive foil stamping on the cover, but that just says Neue Gallery. But when I looked at their archives, I said, you have this amazing collection of patterns, design work. I said, why don't we use them on the cover? So this is what I have done for them. So, every issue of this catalog is always different. The square is always there. It may change color. This is my table of contents. They've divided it into different, the Neue House would be reproductions. And actually some of them are, well, they can only be reproductions of, the Bauhaus and Vienna Secession. So that's the kind of range of products that they have. And of course the books, I did this, the first one was the one on the left. That was in 2008. If you ever come across this Austrian designer, Dagobert Pecke is his name, P-E-C-H-E. I've never heard of this man, and when I went into the Neue Gallery, it was just an amazing collection. He did everything: wallpapers, costumes, tea, silverware, furniture. I said, how come we never had this in design history? This was like a missing link. Anyway, so, it just proves to show that, goes to show that one never stops accumulating knowledge, and in every opportunity one gets. Okay, so aside from the books that I did on architecture, I also have done books on photography. So this is my husband's book, which I did, so obviously collaborative. But the cover of the book is actually a real photograph that was a phenomenon in Rome that we saw. And these are starlings that come at the end of the day. They're usually only within a limited window of time during the winter from like 3:25 to 3:45. So they are all over Rome, and you will see them probably above the main terminal station, and then also sometimes above this stadium in Eur, which is the southern part of Rome. Anyway, there was Richard created this body of work, which became a book that's now, it's been out now since 2009, published by Princeton Architectural Press. So the reason I show this first is because Richard and I thought that for a book on this kind of strange phenomenon, I mean, who leads these birds anyway? Because they come in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and they're this this sky show, and you think it's almost kind of apocalyptic. Has anybody have seen this? I mean, if you look at this in the droves, they look like locusts, and they're like about to invade you, but they stay there, and then they settle for the night on top of the trees. So he took several pictures of it. We thought it would be a great cover because the title was Animalogic, and he's done a whole series of projects for museums. Anyway, this is just, these are some of the images. This is not Photoshop. This has not been altered. These are all these starlings. Anyway, as is typical, publishers always say, books with black and white covers don't sell. Just like the magazine, remember? And so they said, can you use a color image? And so we proposed a color image for the book cover, and then the jacket is black and white. So this is the cover on the front, which is in the Museum of Man in Paris, on the right. If you ever have a chance to go there, it's all like animal skeletons, and then suddenly you see this flayed man right in front. So it's the only human against all these animal skeletons. And then on the back cover is an image of the California Academy of Sciences when the dioramas were being dismantled before Renzo Piano did the new edition. They did ask for a new logo, though. I didn't get to do it. Okay, so some pages from the book. This is butterfly wings. Images, this is from the Smithsonian, taxidermied animals. This is, again, by dioramas from various museums all over the world. I think this is in Canada. And then a collection also of birds' nests. And then this was my visual log. This caused a little bit of controversy in my household because Richard was very perturbed that I didn't put page numbers. And he said, why didn't you put page numbers? Because, if a collector sees the images, they might want to refer to page whatever. And I said, no, it's going to destroy the look of the book. So I said, this is what I propose. So this is a detail of it. I have a visual index in the back, and every photograph is, every photograph in the book is in these 2 pages, and they are in fact grouped by proximity. So if they are adjacent to each other, you'll see them together. If there are 4 of them, like those birds' nests, like they're on the right, they're all together, so they're all in a horizontal. Okay, product designs. This is another Cranbrook graduate, Eric Chan, asked me to design this book. He was the editor. This is part of that whole series by Rockport, 1,000 product designs. And what I like about this was that, again, because of my interest, when Eric said, okay, Lucille, how many, we have chairs, we have digital products, we have health, care products, we have utensils in the kitchen, household. And he says, well, how are we going to categorize them? And I said, yeah, well, you don't want to say chairs. You can say seating. But then how, if I want to be consistent with all the 10 chapters, what can we do? So I came up with using one word, a verb, for every single chapter. So you have sit, illuminate. I mean, you know what it is then. Live, eat, care. Connect would be about digital products. And then work is a workspace. So when I came back to the States from Rome, it sort of dislodged me because I closed my practice in San Francisco, and I just thought, here I am back in the city that I went for 65 interviews, but I don't have the energy anymore. I'm 20 years older. And so I thought, I'm going to have to go and show my portfolio again. But this time around, I don't have the big portfolio. I have my computer. And so I started calling my friends, and I said, people who are now, of course, partners in their firms, Pentagram, all of those people, we were young at the same time. And so I said, what can you have any projects maybe? So I started showing my work again. So this is, if you talk about the journey, how many times do you think you'll start at 0? You're not starting at 0, really, but you're starting in a different context. So I'd go back to New York, I had been there before. I had lived there. It was a pivotal time for me. But then, does history repeat itself? So all these questions come to mind, and you think, but then you realize, what? Your talent is portable, and if you're constantly thinking about how to be relevant, your work will never look dated. So an opportunity came to me through Gerhard Nodell, who was the president, who was the director of Cranbrook at the time, who was retiring. And he wanted, and when I was there in the 80s, he was the chair of the fiber department. And so he asked me, hey, do you design books? Do I design books? And so he said, I have this catalog, can you design a catalog? And I thought it was great because it was the first project I did when I arrived, when I came back to the States, and I thought, you still have it, Lucille, you can still do this thing. So this was the cover. It was called Hot House. And then this is a spread of one of the essays by Glenn Adamson, who is now the director of the Museum of Art and Design. So I'm going to just show you now, I don't know how much time do we have. It's 8 o'clock. Okay, 8:06. So I wanted to just show you paralleling my trajectory as a designer. I've also been a teacher. So I have never given up one for the other. And it's exhausting, of course, to be teaching and then working at the same time, with your work. And to me, the challenge was, and I give this this is always my lesson, is that if I go to my class and I'm teaching 18 students, 18, 20 students, and I'm being critical about their work, I go back to my office and I'm just wasted. Because it's exhausting. You're not just critiquing one person. You're critiquing 18 people who each have their own view of things. So, you can't do the blanket cookie cutter critique. You have to go to them one by one. And so I go back to my office and I have a project and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, I can design this. And I thought, no, you can't stop there. You just critique 18 people. You have to critique yourself. And so that's been a check and balance for me, that somehow, whatever I've done as an educator will eventually and inevitably affect the way I teach. So I had a great 20 years in San Francisco at California College of the Arts. This building was a former Greyhound bus depot, so it's horizontal, 60,000 square feet. You don't have to take elevators. You just run. You run from one room to another. You sprint, really. And the last 2 years, I was the chair of the graduate program in design. I created the program, and I purposely called it an MFA in design because I wanted to look at design in a meta way, that it was a holistic discipline. But as luck would have it, I arrived in New York, and as I told you, I had no job. I had my previous clients. Some of them still gave me projects. I had to go and show my work again. I got that project from Cranbrook. And somebody told me, hey, Lucille, they're looking for a professor at Parsons. And I thought, Parsons, do I want to teach again? And I don't really have a good opinion of Parsons. I thought, there's really no good school in New York City. Most of the good schools are outside of New York. That's why you go to New Haven, you go to Detroit, you go to Bloomfield Hills, right? You go to you go to Valencia, California, and you're not in the main cities, and there's too much distraction. So if you really are serious, I thought, in my mind, I thought, okay. But I decided to try it, and it was the first endowed professorship that they were offering. So I applied for the position, I got it after a year, and so this is now where I am housed. But I just wanted to show you a project I did when I was at CCA now. They took out craft. It's no longer California College of Arts and Crafts. It's now called California College of the Arts. So because I'm a practicing designer, of course, they tap you. They tap you for projects at school. And so in this case, this was a graduate poster for our graduate programs. 1111 is our address in San Francisco. So it seemed to make sense that you could really build on the numerical, just like the 7x7. But these are some of the proposals I did, and then in the end, this is what was done. this is actually one of the posters I'm giving away, or whatever, who's going to get it later. And it's really, to me, kind of reminds me of what I did at Cranbrook, those first street signs, that it serves so many purposes. There were images of the student work, there was a calendar of events, so that you could read what was going on over the period of, 2 weeks or something, and still be able to highlight the variety of work from the 4 different programs: writing, design, visual criticism, and fine arts. So this is now where I am. The new school is the big umbrella. The new school, of course, Parsons, of course, is part of the new school. I don't know if you know that, but we recently had a redesign by Pentagram using this new font called Noya, which I told them, don't use Noya, it's my client. And they said, well, it's new, I said, yeah, but it's European, maybe we should use something else. Anyway, but the idea here was that, and I don't have the motion version of this, but this font was designed by Peter Bielak, and he was commissioned to actually create this font so that they have a different, they actually work by algorithm. So we have versions of this where if you look at the W, they call this the NEV. The new instead of the new, they call it the NEV. So it tells you what the problems of the typefaces are. But we work with it. We try and Paula, specifically Paula Sher, essentially relinquished this to us and said, Lucille, you go crazy. Tell your students to do whatever they want to do. So this is the kind of lockup which I find awkward, but I'm not here to critique this thing for now. But you can see how the new school is sort of the generic. But anyway, this is my program. I'm in the School of Art, Media, and Technology. I'm the Associate Dean as well. We are the biggest within the school. I mean, there's the School of Fashion, the School of Art, Media, and Technology, and then there's the School of Design Strategies, School of Constructed Environments, which includes architecture, product design, and lighting. So it's a big school. We are, AMT has about, I think, all of Parsons has about 5,000 students, I think. So this is the font that Peter Bielak had done, and I just want to show you, well, anyway, that's kind of an aside. So here are the 5 schools within Parsons. AMT, I mean, that's really kind of an internal thing, but it's Art, Media, and Technology. So Art, Media, and Technology has 10 programs. So I kind of, we have 50 full-time faculty. Now, if you think about it, when I was at CCAC, there were only 3 full-time faculty. So here I am, I'm in charge of full-time faculty, and there are, so, you can see here, Design and Technology, we have BFA and MFA, we have CD, Communication Design, BFA. I'm also working at introducing or developing an MFA, which will be launched in 2018, photography, fine arts, illustration, and graphic design, which is the AAS. We have 2-year program. But the 10th one, which we just introduced this year, is the Masters in Professional Practice, MPS, in data visualization. So that's new. Anyway, these are some, again, because you're a designer, they always say, hey, Lucille, can you design our posters? And so I said, yeah, I'll design it, but you have to pay my assistants because they're doing the work for the school. So I'll do it for free, but you have to pay them $20 an hour. So I choose from my students and find out who can do this. But this, I just want to show you, this is a really solid body of work that I have done for them. We have a year-end festival that showcases, of course, the graduate exhibits, a series of events showcasing the work, and this is when parents come for graduation, etc. So in 2012, I did this. In 2013, I did this. And then in 2014, I did this. So, I mean, we choose, because I'm doing because they give it to one designer, I think it's the best opportunity to sort of just rethink it every single time. You don't have to do it, the font was given to me by the marketing department, and they said, can you use this font? And I said, I don't know, I find it weird, but that's okay. So so the one thing I did was I actually made the dot black. They said, yeah, you can do whatever you want. So I did that I said, that kind of quirky quality, just add one little thing. So anyway, so that's been a recurring theme. I just want to show you some of the pieces that I have done then. So I create a template, a system that we essentially give to the different schools, and then they can apply it. Because there's so many of these, somebody might say, oh, I have 20 students. Can I showcase 20 of their work? I said, well, here, I'll give you the template. Just replace the image. And then this is the website for the School of Constructed Environments. I'm just showing you some of the designs I created for them. Nobody has landing pages anymore, so I said, I'm just going to experiment with using the initials, but we don't have to use this. So in fact, they didn't use it because I thought it was, it's lighting, interior design, product design, and architecture. So I just thought, you could keep changing the images, or recycle them, rotate them. Okay, this was a project several years ago when the Dean of Architecture at the time, he's no longer the Dean, he's now the Dean of Cornell Architecture School. Kurt, what's his name? I forget now. So anyway, the 4 programs under SCE, under his purview, he wanted me to design a poster. And I thought, this was my first idea. I said, oh, maybe we'll show some student work. But then when I kept I put their work in their faces, and it looked kind of macabre, actually, and looked bizarre. I didn't like the hairstyles on top of that. So I said, okay, forget this. So I said, let's do something using their projects and, faculty, student work. So I came up with this. And in the end, this is what I did. I made on one side, and then this is on the back side. So it's really the positive. This is the positive, and this is the negative. And if you see them together, this is what they look like. So when people ask me, they say, what's the front? I said, there's no front. And what's the back? There's no back. There's only sides. Because each side serves a purpose. The first side is really about giving you the pragmatic information, and then the back side is more about the poetics of those disciplines. So Aftertaste is actually a symposium that is done by the MFA in interior design. I created their logo, and then I also designed their flyers. Now, when I was told that the name of their symposium was Aftertaste, I said, why? Give me the etymology of this, or what's the genesis of Aftertaste? They said, well, when people talk about taste, interior design and interior architecture, we want to look at like postmodern, excuse me, like after the taste, or after when there's no longer any taste. Really, everything goes. And I said, okay, so let me think about that. So there's a lot of these kind of, the typography being played with in a way that's like a double reading, or it's being flopped. So there's much more kinetic quality with them. And then I always change the color again. And then lastly, I think this is my business card. And, some of you may ask me for my Parsons business card. I'll give it to you. It has that Noya font. But this is my identity. And when people say, what is your identity? I said, really, it's evolving. It's always depending on where I have been and depending on what strikes me at the moment. But I look at this, and it's, again, the kind of transparency of what is on the front. Forget front and back, right? What is on one side and what is on the other side, and which side tells the story better, and which side provokes questions. So it's always about this kind of dichotomy, I think, and that's what keeps people, I think, interested, is that you don't give everything away. And I think like this is my kind of mantra in a way from John Cage. I'm gonna reprise him. That, I have been practicing now for over 30 years. And I think, my students are, this is the thing about teaching, is that you get older, but your students are the same age every year. Right? They're always 21, but I'm older. And so, I always think, how can they take me, how can they trust me? How can they look at me and just say, oh yeah, you're hip, yeah, you get us. I don't have to be hip. I just need to understand them and provide a vision for them so that, they don't have to copy my work. That's why I don't show my work. It took me years to develop that. So I said, it's really all about you. It's how you evolve. And so, you know, the older you get, the more mature you are in your practice, like me and like some of us here in this room, you know, you start with a kind of, you know, parameters. You know, design is really about indicating, you know, parameters, what's here, what does the client want? And then so you're very purposeful. You want to solve the problem. You know, and then for me, I just thought, yeah, okay, I solved the problem, but you know, I really want to solve my problem too. And you know, they don't need to know that. That client doesn't need to know, is this really about you? They don't know that. It's about me, but they think it's about them. So they're happy. You know, they're happy. They come to my office, they say, I like coming to your office. I learn a lot. You have stuff on your walls. It's great, you know. So I said, yeah, well, how's your office? Can't really put stuff on the walls. You know, you have all these books, your inspiration is here. I said, I'm really lucky. And I think for us, for designers, we are lucky that we have a profession. We chose a profession, but I think in the end, it chose us. That it required a certain kind of person to be this kind, to help, you know, solve problems. I hate to use that phrase, I'm solving your problems. No. You know, but somehow there's this journey that we do together, and they discover things about themselves that they had no idea. You know, and it was left to you as a designer to actually pick up those things, those intangible things that only you know. They know, but they didn't know it then. You know, so the purposeful for me is, you know, this whole purposelessness, you know, and I think, like my students, you know, let's sign up for Lucille's class. And I say, why did you sign up for my class? You know, I say, well, you know, we saw your work on the internet. And it's like, okay. And then some people say, yeah, I've heard that you get it. What does that mean? Okay, so the purposeful purposelessness for me is what I'm about now. So somehow you may think I'm getting, you know, like when many years ago at the AIGA in Vancouver, I sang in front of 2,000 people. You know, it was like a karaoke thing, and I thought, you know, what do I have to lose? You know, is it going to make me any less of a designer? Will they respect me less just because I'm out of tune? So, you know, you just do things. Somehow you just do things, and you just like rack it up and just say, one more thing for the resume. Sang in front of 2,000 people. And then that's next to went to 65 interviews. Anyway, that's my presentation today. Thank you. So how much time do we have in this room before they kick us out? Are there questions? Feedback? Identity systems? Liz, my student from CCAC, one of my graduates. Nice to see her here.
Yeah, I got this every week. Isn't that great? So you mentioned wanting to stay relevant, and I'm wondering how you do that.
How does one stay relevant? Well, it's really about assuming that there are other people better than you are, and that you actually can. There's always things to pick up, you know, on all fronts. You know, and so it's a. I guess I have trusted my judgment very, very strongly. I may not say it to other people, but you know, and then I think if you have a habit of thinking something, you know, it's like anything. It becomes a skill. It requires practice, and so I understand when I'm thinking, you know, I don't even ask myself, you know, like, oh, is this like, are they gonna like this? You know, but for me, it's like, is this really, did this push me? You know, was this a good, I'm not repeating myself here? You know, so, okay, maybe this is good. And what's my inspiration? So I may look at, you know, I mean, as I said, you know, like the Heckscher Gallery, you know, you look at the architecture and you think, yeah, well, one part is new, one thing is old, but then do you discount what is existing? You know, there's all these possibilities that exist. And so I guess for me, I'm a really good synthesizer. I've always known that. And so when Jenny said beautiful and pretty, you know, when Aaron Betsky called my work beautiful, I resented it. And I said, you know, what does that mean? You know, I like my work to be edgy and kind of gritty. He said, yeah, but you can't help it. Your work is beautiful. And I said, okay, but then I have to make a very conscious effort that, you know, it's not just pretty. So there is a difference. There is a difference between what's beautiful and what's pretty. And so, you know, I went to black and white. I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go just severe. Go to the exact opposite of what I normally do. You know, I can do things with my eyes closed. You know, like that complexity layering thing. I do that very easily. I somehow have this kind of capacity, like compositionally, it's so intuitive in me. And so I thought, that's too easy. You know, so I was asking that question just recently. I thought, that's too easy, Lucille. You know, and here I am. I'm thinking, I have done this for over 30 years. I should just be satisfied repeating myself, but I can't. You know, you're not going to know it. You don't know what I was doing, what I threw out. So I just have to confront myself. So that's, for me, being relevant. People might find that relevant, but I have to find myself relevant first. And that's the way I do it. You know, so the inspiration comes from like inopportune places, unpredictable places, but you just have to have the ear for it and the eye for it. And that you know how it is, like epiphanies. You know, how often do we have epiphanies? When you realize something happened here. You know, and I try to like figure that out. You know, you can't, because there's no formula for it. But I trust judgment, my judgment. I trust my students. You know, I look at them and just say, you know, you will be doing this for 50 years. Just think. I'm in my 30th year now. You're going to graduate next year. You'll be doing this until 2065. Just think. Will you be relevant? It's a big deal, right? Will you be doing this still and still be happy? Actually, like here I am, like here I was 12 years ago in Denver talking about my work. And then here I am in 2015 talking about my work again. You know, I think every 10 years is good. Every 12 years is good. Gives you an opportunity, gives you a platform, you know, gives you a chance, okay, well, you know, I'm going to like put that aside. I'm not, you know, not, that PDF, well, first of all, there'll be no PDFs 10 years from now. Anyway, long-winded answer to your question. Yes. Oh.
Can you?
Oh. I think, yeah, and then after him.
Okay,
you.
this is about relevance. I'm probably one of the last generations of designers that kind of grew up using T-squares and X-Acto
Slide rules?
blades and, you know, proportion scales. How do you stay relevant in this digital age where everything is about, you know, interactive, you know, websites and it's constantly evolving? I mean, that's one of the things that I struggle with constantly is, you know, how do you stay relevant and fresh,
Yeah.
you know, in this new age of you know, digital technology?
Well, it's not about, I mean, it's about the ideas, though. The ideas are the ones that people get. So I don't know how to use InDesign. I have my students who are, every year they get better and quicker, right? But what I realize is that when I'm drawing, when I'm sketching my idea, and I stand and I sit next to them, my brain is faster than their hand. You know, so they're saying, wait a minute, I have to go into Photoshop. I said, yeah, but I can see it in my head already. You know, so when I've never felt deprived. I've never felt that I had been, like, you know, left behind by technology. Because it's my ideas that keep going. I mean, it's not, you know, whatever. It could be in motion. It could be, you know, whatever tools there are. Because in 2065, this is not going to be around anymore. So what do you teach? You can't be. You can teach the tools because they need to make a living. You know, some people say, "I'm just starting out. I need to at least have. You know, I can be production or, you know, whatever person, whatever." And, you know, but, you know, it's your ideas that will stand out. That's how they will. That's how you will stand above everybody else, because your ideas are yours and it's unique. And so I can only teach them how to think. You know, the tools, I say, you know, you can figure that out. Go to lynda.com and go to take a tutorial, right? You can do that. But, you know, why will they come to me instead of you? And why you? You know, when they meet you, see, this is the thing. When you meet people, I remember getting a phone call from somebody from Atlanta, and they said, we saw your work in CA. CA, remember? This guy has collected every CA from 1982. I asked him how many linear feet that was. And I said, okay, where was I again? The CA thing? No, I was thinking of something else. Atlanta, okay, I get this guy. I said, I saw your work on NCA. I said, yeah, okay. I said, I'd like to meet you. Can you fly me out there? And he said, we don't really have the budget. So I said, okay, first sign of a relationship that could go awry is that they're looking at design as a beauty contest. They saw something in the magazine, they saw something in the book, they did not want to meet me. And I said, this is about a relationship. You know, I want to meet you too, because I can decide whether I want to take you or not. It's not just you taking me. And so of course I did it anyway. I said, okay, let's do one project. But it was the most arduous process throughout that whole time. And I realized it because they did not get me. You know, and it's the only way they'll know is when they meet you. So at the end of the day, that portfolio, all that work is out the door. They just have to look at you and just say, I trust you. Your work is great, and you could do a good job for us, and I trust you. And that's because they've met you. So, you know, all of these medium stuff, you know, how do you be, am I catching up on technology? It doesn't even enter my mind. You know, somebody saying, yeah, you know, like, let's use this social media stuff. I said, okay, great, show me how to do it. And I look at it and said, okay, I can see what it's doing. Okay, and then I push it. And that's what I can do. I don't know how to do it, but I know how to use it, you know. So what does that take? What kind of brain takes that, right? When you say social media, you know, like Instagram, and say, okay, tell me how it works. Okay, I get it. Okay, because you're older. Your brain synapses are faster. One hopes. Or you can synthesize faster. Okay, so I think, you know, if you can put that aside, you have to stay fresh. Your ideas have to be the one that you will get you in the door. Yes, okay, now we have your question. Does that answer your question? Okay, yes.
We just got the catalog for the Neue Galleries.
The gold one?
Yes, the gold.
Was it wrinkled when you got it?
No.
It was a gold envelope, right?
Oh, I see. But your practice is so varied. Do you like to have credit somewhere in the catalog that it's designed by, or do you?
It's in there.
It's in there, but I mean.
Look at the
because your
last
practice is
page.
So varied, do you?
Yeah.
Request it, or do you not request it? Or?
Well, it depends. I mean, I've designed children's books because there's a publishing company in San Francisco. Unfortunately, it's no longer around. It's called Children's Book Press. And so I designed a book for them, and the title was I See the Rhythm, right? And it uses these paintings of this artist and the poems and the poems of another writer. So I was to marry the two. And then on top of that, there was a historical timeline of what was going on during that period, like the blues, for example. So there was a painting of, you know, blues musicians in New Orleans or whatever, and then there's the poem, and I thought, okay, I'll synthesize it. And then there's the timeline. So think, 3 levels of information, right? And so I do the cover. I usually do the cover last because, you know, I've expended energy in doing the front, the guts of the book, and I thought, okay, how can I distill this in the cover? Now that I know the inside, what can I show outside so that it is like the tip of the iceberg? You know, you would buy the book or you'd open the book. Okay, so here I am. I see the rhythm. So it was, how do you spell rhythm? Right? No vowels, right? All consonants. Okay, R-H-Y. Okay, don't look at dictionary.com. Okay, whatever. Okay, so anyway, I did this. I did the cover design, and the cover design, the word rhythm had a ghosting. It was almost like, there was like different colors on top of each other. It was like the rhythm of the word rhythm. So the publisher says, Lucille, this is going to kids. Rhythm is hard enough to spell. So what you're doing is complicating the readability of the word rhythm. I said, I can read it. The ghosting is very faint. It just gives it some life. And she said, I'm sorry, but I'm the publisher. And I said, take my name out of those credits. That is important to me. The book, I worked so hard to design the guts of it, and the tipping point of one word and what I did to it, she said, it's really important. As an educator, she said, I'm an educator too. So she said, I'm going to have to insist that the word rhythm should not have any tricks, just one color. I said, okay, take my name out. And so she called me back after a few days. She said, we're keeping your design. And this book has won the Caldecott Medal many times. So, it's just, again, conviction. But, I mean, I know when I've lost the battle, and I also know inside me when I'm I'm half-baked about my idea, and I would go with, I would listen. I just say, you know what, you're right. I'm not going to insist on it just because it may be better. Your idea may be better.
So you showed work from such a wide span of time over your whole career, and I think that's really interesting because a lot of times designers will just show some of their most recent work. So one question I had for you is, when you look back at some of the first things you've done in college and even at the beginning of your career, are there things you wish you had changed, or has your taste in design remained pretty consistent?
Well, taste is, again, I mean, I can't go back. I can only imagine what I was thinking when I was, doing it. So I have no regrets, is what I'm saying. I look at everything. It is of a time. It is of a time and of a context. And so the factors that surrounded that whole period, the ethos that I was around that time, contributed to the work that I was doing. So, I can look back and still be inspired by it. So I don't say, oh, I could have done this. I can't, because, this is the thing about design anyway. You have every opportunity to be better, like the Neue Gallery. Every year they come to me and say, oh, I have an idea. I said, okay, go play. Because I know it's always doing something, building up on something you have already done. And then, you surprise yourself. So, the range, I mean, it's great that I can look back on those things now and then just see what, I don't know, at what point did I feel like I had a block? For me, that's really the problem. I'm thinking, at what point did I feel like I wasn't producing as much? And I was asked by Princeton to design my monograph. That was 10 years ago. The book has not been done. And so people were telling me, when is your book coming out? We're waiting. And I said, yeah, it's so hard. Well, do it by decades or something. Or, do it by, choose 10 works that you feel were really important, and then revolve a story around them. And what were the things that were going on and your inspiration, etc. So there will be kind of like a linchpin for one, for that decade, say. And then I just thought, I realized I did it. I did a timeline, and the time where I was less productive was when I had my sons. So I was productive. I was just not productive in the way people think. I was taking care of 2 boys. So that was good. I thought, yeah, well, it's not like, you can't have everything, but you have to try. So you can't help but still be doing the work that you want to do. But, things kind of, it's all relative. So I know when I said, oh, yeah, that was in the 1990s. Oh, okay. Max was born in 1994, and then, Rafe was born, whatever, so 1997. So during that period of time, how can you be productive in a different way? Okay, there was another question here. Yeah.
What advice do you have for young designers in terms of building a successful career?
Just don't think of success. Successful career. Okay, let's define success. Success is, if you think of success as doing what you love to do and being acknowledged for it and appreciated for it, that's good. The money comes later. So when, people say, yeah, my freelance work I can only do on the weekends because I have this 9-to-5 job, and so I'm really happy on the weekends. And I said, 40 hours a week and to be unhappy is not a good thing. It's a big chunk of time to be unhappy and to put all your energies in a thing that you don't care for. And so when I tell students, we graduate, right? They say, oh, what kind of job should I get? And I'll just say, take the first job if you like the person. You may not like the person, but you like the design. There could be unethical practices, but you just need to know when to leave. Once you picked up something, okay, I've learned my lesson. I know how to run a business. I saw it close, in close proximity to these two partners. Now I know how to write a proposal. Whatever. So different things, different lessons along the way. But if you're unhappy, you can't compartmentalize your life. I just feel like if my 9-to-5 job is terrible, and then I'm only happy on the weekends, it's a waste of energy. And so success for me is doing the work that you love 7 days a week. That's really what you want to do. And so what the barometers are different for everybody. So people say, yeah, my parents say I need to have a job right away, Okay, get a job. Get a job, but that will be your trajectory. You will build on that. You can at least write that in your resume, but you may feel like this is not the place for me. So what does that take? And it takes knowing what you want. Takes knowing who you are and just say, this is not me. I'm doing somebody else's work. I'm good. They have to listen to me. I have to find that place. And the more you do it, you practice thinking about that, you will find it. And that will be your success. Then the money comes later. The money comes. Oh my, okay. Okay. These are posters for the posters, right? One at a time?
Yes.
Okay. I hope it's not any of my relatives, so I can give you a free poster. Okay, 732482. Oh, the last three, 482. Okay, so which one do we give them? Oh, did they choose?
Yeah, if you want.
Oh, no. I said, oh, let's see. Okay, first of all, these posters, I'm going to just show you. These are all posters that are already not out of print. I mean, these are old. I didn't even show this piece. I did this at CCAC. Okay, that's one. Oh, but then it's too bad whoever gets the last one. Here's the other one. I didn't show this either. Oh, this is the same though.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the last one, it even has crop marks. This is good. It has the CMYK thing. Okay, remember CMYK? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so.
Do you want to pick one, or do you want to pick one?
You pick
Whatever
one.
you want to do.
I'm not looking.
Yeah, go for it. Pick another one while you're thinking.
Okay, another one. 412.
Well, I'll take it if so.
Is it the CA guy? Hey, this is rigged. Okay, not rigged. Okay, congratulations. Oh my God, she's really thinking this through.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, good. 404. Okay.
And one more.
One more?
Yes, we
Yeah,
have
because
four,
we
right?
have two of the other one. Okay, 419.
419. All right.
Who's that?
Yeah, cool. You're welcome.
It's just first come, first serve. Come on,
Do
quickly.
you want to sign them too?
Oh, I'll sign it.
Yeah, you guys can stay up here till I'll sign them. So, thanks for coming, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Do you have a special pen?
No,
I have a pen. You know, I have a special pen. Yeah, she can sign them for you guys.
the,